Oh no!
Awesome.
Mind my business!
Fail.
Mind my business.
Oh yeah.
Mind my business. Hey, and welcome to a new episode of Mind My Business. It's our opinion podcast from Hype 1000, and we talk about everything concerning the audio industry and share our thoughts, ideas, opinions of things we see in articles, in postings on Instagram or LinkedIn or wherever we find interesting things to talk about. And yeah, this episode wraps up our first week of this new project that we're doing. We're going to be on a Easter break for the next 4 days from Friday till Monday. So I'll see you again on Tuesday. And today I would love to talk to you about corporate podcasting because it's something that is pretty much all around us. Whenever you open a relevant news outlet in that field, you hear that this company just started a corporate podcast, this company started a corporate podcast, and then again there's a lot of consultants and agencies that focus on telling organization companies, this is how you do your podcast. If you need something, we'll help you. And of course, in general, that makes a lot of sense, but it is always the focus on the B2C side of it. So a company creating a podcast. The latest one I saw was IKEA started this new podcast. So, and then they're hosting it and launching it on Spotify and Apple Podcasts. And truly being honest, it must be something that they just do for the fun of it. And it must be something where they feel like, okay, we want to be state of the art, in quotation marks, to do something that is currently really relevant and is currently really hyped as a medium, which is podcasting at the moment. But again, like I said before, I haven't seen any truly successful corporate podcasting format that has made really a big splash in the industry, that has become really relevant for the consumers. But again, if you have an example or disagree, please let me know. Share your thoughts, share your ideas wherever you can find us. And that idea of focusing on B2C, in my opinion, most likely comes from the fact that, those consultants, those agencies, always have that B2C focus. A classic advertising agency, a classic content agency that has been doing video before are now offering, hey, we do podcast as well, because it's the same kind of thing. We know how to do video, of course we know how to do podcasting, which in my opinion is not true. It's a different field. It would be the same kind of thing where you start off saying, okay, in the past I was creating, I don't know, emailing systems, and now we're all talking on social media. So you say, oh, I'm a social media expert as well. But there are social media agencies out there that have the expertise. So in my opinion, now classic ad agencies, creative agencies telling you, oh, we can do podcasting as well. I would be a bit skeptical about it because there are a few out there that might be able to do it, but most likely I would find somebody that is an expert in that field. And there's, not just saying because we're doing that as well, but there's so many other really good companies out there that are, native podcasting that can really help you create something in that field. And then again, there's also those, individual consultants out there that tell you, we show you in those 5 steps how to make a podcast and be really successful. And again, I haven't seen any really, really successful format in that space. So that's why I wanted to talk about to you about corporate podcasting today, and those different areas that could be relevant. And we did that before. So that is the B2C aspect, and in my opinion, that can be relevant if you have the big brand recognition, if you're creating a format that really offers a value to your audience. When it and in my opinion, that could be in sports, if you're a big sports brand, like a media house that could do that. I think there is potential in when it comes to healthcare and beauty. There's a lot of potential for big organizations to do that. For example, if I think about, for example, LVMH or L'Oreal, they could definitely start a podcast. They have all those big testimonials that they could, utilize on. They have those contracts where where they use them for video shoots and for photo shoots. So, signing a new contract saying, hey, we're going to do 1 or 2 podcast episodes, and then taking those people. And I don't know, in that area of beauty, you could do a podcast where you talk about, what is beauty in the 21st century, and talk to different people and really focus on that empowerment of people, and on the message of we're just one part of trying to help you to achieve becoming who you want to be. Fashion brands could focus on some of the stuff I'm talking about, how to create your image, your profile. So that could be really interesting in a different perspective, in a much more quiet, non-visual, which is going to be interesting because it's going to trigger your imagination when it comes to fashion, because it's a mainly visual communication. But that could be quite interesting to do that as well. And yeah, of course, in healthcare, it's about sharing ideas of, for example, educating young people on sexual diseases or whatever it is, where you can listen in and listen to all those experts. And I think that can be really helpful to do that, where you can have longer, deeper conversations in that area to talk about those stories. That could be really interesting to see. And then, of course, all those new content formats that are coming in, where it's not just an interview podcast, or where you just share your company's ideas, like having really interesting content formats where you could talk about, for example, a company specializing in cybersecurity, and maybe doing a crime podcast, where it's like really like an audio book, almost like a really auditive story about a crime that is committed in his cyber environment, and really push that and present the idea of why cybersecurity is so important. That could be something quite interesting. But let's focus on the 2 other areas to define what we consider to be corporate audio. So it's divided into 3. It's the part we talked about before. It's the B2C aspect of it. And then you have the B2B communication, which is really important, and it's neglected by a lot of companies, where you can say, like, I have business partners, I have like premium clients that I can share information with, that I can really build a closer and more personal relationship, because maybe every month the CEO of my company is doing a podcast, maybe even in a closed off environment where you only get access if you're like a premium client, and do that for those distributors, for those B2B partners, we can really bond on that level and show your appreciation using a podcast. That could be really, really interesting as a new way of communicating, because like we said before, text in emails, for example, that has been an overkill in the past. And with the past 2 years of COVID, of course, there is a sort of a Zoom fatigue, and that coin has been the phrase has been coined in the past. So we're tired of screens, we're tired of video, we spend so much time during the day on a screen, that audio as an alternative way of communicating could be really interesting. So we have B2C, we have B2B, and then the third part, or the third section, is the B2E, which is the business to employee, as some people call it business to everybody, but in our case, we always talk, when we talk about B2E, we talk about business to employee. And that has been most likely the biggest area where companies in the past have slacked building, trustworthy, authentic, personal, emotional connections using communication, employee communication, and that showed dramatically during COVID, because you could see in different studies that employer loyalty is going down, especially with the new generations, the Gen Z coming into the workforce. They are not as loyal with brands, and we've talked, experts have been talking about that. Brand loyalty hasn't been as big with millennials and the Gen Z and everybody. So it's the same kind of thing with that loyalty going down. It's the same thing with employers. So building a valuable relationship, building a lasting relationship is really important. And you will not just do that via emails, and you will not do that via polished, high quality video content. You need that personal, that emotional, that authentic communication, and one way to do it and deliver it is a podcast. Because if you look at recent studies, why the younger generations, the people between 18 and 25 listen to podcasts, is because they say it has a certain honesty to it. It is, they speak the way they mean it. So, being really authentic and, transferring that into communications with your teams and employees, I think it's really crucial and a really important aspect. So, yeah, wrapping this up, when you consider corporate podcasting, please, in the future, don't just consider the B2C aspect of it. There's also B2B and B2E, which are really important, which are growing, and which is something, if you're an organization, should definitely look into, because it can be really interesting to change the way you communicate with those two audiences. So enjoy your Easter break. We see you on Tuesday. Thanks.
Why don't you mind your business?